What's up, guys? Today we got another possible upgrade going on in the theater today. We're going to be checking out these RBH 821 SWRs. So shout out to RBH for sending these out for me to review. I've got 3 of these on hand, which are going to be used as my LCRs. That is left, center, right channel speakers for those that do not know. But let's go ahead and get these unboxed. And in the meantime, if you have missed my home theater tour or my review of the other RBH speakers, I currently have the RBH 661 SWRs. Those are on-wall speakers. These are also on-wall speakers. So if you missed that video or those videos, definitely check them out. I'll leave some links down in this video's description. What we have here is we have a pair of French cleats. So one half will go on the wall, the other half will go, or the other side will go on the back of the speaker, and they'll just kind of drop on top of each other like a picture frame. So that's how these will mount flush to the wall. These come very well packed with some nice dense foam. And these are also some heavy speakers. These are, I believe, 45 pounds each. So they do have a little bit of weight to them. These are all handmade in Utah. You can get these in different finishes if you want, but what I have here is going to be their regular satin black finish. It does have a slight sheen to it, so it should keep reflections down to a bare minimum. So as you can see, very nice finish. If you got greasy hands, you might get some fingerprints on there. But this is what we got. Let's go through the measurements really quick. This is a pretty big speaker, especially coming from the 661s that I have. So height-wise, we're looking at 28 inches from top to bottom, about 14 inches in width from side to side. And then depth-wise, which makes this a really cool speaker, is that it's only 5 inches deep, which I believe is also about the same size as the 661s, which I really like in my home theater because if you want to take up as minimal space as possible, get these things off of your floors, these are nicely built, robust speakers, and they don't take up a lot of space in your theater room. So build quality wise, this is just like the 661s. These are made from HDF, not MDF. HDF is high density fiberboard, so it's a lot denser feeling. So if you give it the knuckle test, there's like 0 resonance inside the enclosure. So this feels like a solid cement brick. And you can feel it when you pick it up. Like I said, it's 45 pounds each. Now this does have a magnetic grill. I believe the grill is made out of MDF, wrapped in fabric, and then the magnets are behind the cloth here. This is definitely an upgrade from the other speakers that I've got. The 661s are 2 6.5-inch bass drivers, and then it's got a, I believe, a 1 by 1.3-inch ribbon tweeter. This steps up to dual 8-inch aluminum cone drivers. Then we got a 1 by 4.75-inch AMT tweeter. So I think it's like 120 millimeter by 25 millimeter to be exact, per their specs. So this tweeter should give you some very good coverage. And I would expect these to sound very detailed. So the frequency response of this is 55 hertz to 35 kilohertz. So it should have some really nice high-end frequency detail. Whereas the 661s, I believe, were 50 hertz to 40 kilohertz. And if you saw that review, I really did like the amount of detail on those tweeters. Even though this one is spec'd to not reach quite as high, I personally, or you probably couldn't hear up to 40 kilohertz, but the detail should be just as good, maybe a little bit better, especially with the bigger tweeter. You're probably gonna get some better coverage. But as far as connections in the back, you would mount the cleats, I believe, right back in this section here if you're gonna go with the flush mount. But I requested to get a VESA 300 mount thread inserts for all of these. So if you want to pick up you can get some relatively inexpensive TV mounts. But this is a bi-ampable, bi-wireable speaker. You get the jumpers in the middle. It's got the nice silver plating. This might be rhodium plating. And then as you can see, this is also a sealed speaker. So there are no ports in this speaker. Now, one other major difference that I really do like about this particular speaker is that this doesn't have the phase plugs. So on the 661, the phase plug has that little kind of like a cone shape that sticks out of the woofer. This one doesn't have that. And the thing with those is that the air would come out of this phase plug And then it will kind of make almost kind of like a port noise to it, because since it's a sealed speaker, the air will have to escape somewhere. Unfortunately, it would come out of this plug. So these guys are gonna go right behind the screen. This is an acoustically transparent screen. It's a Screen Innovations. It's a Weave 1.1 gain, Maestro 2 to be exact. But the speakers are going behind the screen, left, center, and then right. I would take some footage behind the screen, but then it's like I only got a 2-foot space back there, 2.5-foot space. So trying to get some video back there, it's gonna be pretty tough. Okay, so I am behind my screen, and I have temporarily set up all 3 speakers back here. So I've got the left, center, right behind the screen, and I'm gonna do the comparisons with the 661s, which are behind each of the 821s. So the reason for me wanting to have identical speakers in every location is that when the sound is panning through each one of the speakers, either the lower channels up to the top channels, everything is going to sound exactly the same. So that's perfect timbre matching. Plus, it's going to have less for your processor to do during calibration. So that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to get this as well, is just that perfect cohesiveness. Now, I know some of you guys want to have larger speakers in the front for your LCRs and skimp on the surround channels because you think there's not a lot of information on the surround channels or the top channels. And that's great for you guys, but I know that's not true. Once you hear a system with all matching speakers, it definitely ups the game for being perfectly timbre matched and perfect cohesiveness. So that's why I wanted to get 18 matching speakers. So having these guys in the mix is going to be a little bit different because obviously the tweeters are different, the woofers are different, and I would expect them to sound different. I don't know if I'm gonna like it or not. I mean, I'm sure these are great sounding speakers, probably better sounding speakers, but losing that timbre matching might be kind of a detriment to the full cohesiveness. So I'm excited to try these out. Let's go ahead and get them hooked up. Now these are gonna be hooked up to a Trinnov processor and powered by Trinnov 8M amplifier. The demos are gonna be played back using a Zidu media player. I am going to be comparing the 821s to the 661s, and to make it as fair as possible, I am not going to be using any room correction. They will also be level matched, and I will be running these full range with no subwoofers. The first few demos will be only the front, left, center, and right channels with no surround channels active. First up is midway. These are way bigger than the 661s, so they should be able to put out a lot more bass. I know it's hard to tell over a YouTube video, but the 821s, if you're listening at 2 a.m. in the morning and you're trying not to wake up your neighborhood, I am confident in saying you could run these full range and still get a very satisfying home theater experience with plenty of bass. These have a heavier bottom end over the 661s, which really isn't surprising since the 61s are so small. I wouldn't say the 821s blow them out of the water, but it's got more of a tactile sensation, at least in my room they did. The explosions dug lower, and the mid-bass had a beefier presence that felt thicker and more in your face, so to speak. The 661s felt like it was 2 steps behind. The bomb drops were lighter on impact, and the planes sounded like they had smaller engines than what I heard on the 821s. You can also push the 821s harder than the 661s, which would make these a better fit for much bigger rooms. Which also brings us to Godzilla -1. There's one scene in this movie that can make tweeters totally give up, and that's when Godzilla lets out that big, gigantic roar. Now, both of these speakers didn't crack for this demo, but the 821s definitely had a crisper, sharper top end to it. It made the score sound bigger, wider, and made the front stage push deeper in behind my screen, which gave this specific scene a much bigger, more cinematic feel. The 61s came across more forward, and it did feel smaller in comparison. Another demo I really like is Palpatine's voice in The Rise of Skywalker. It's deep, it's resonant, it'll make your center channel sound either like a child or like James Earl Jones, depending on how big your center channel is.
You will rule all the galaxy as the new Emperor. You will rule all the galaxy as the new Emperor. But beware, she is not who you think she is. But beware, she is not who you think she is. Who is she? Who is she?
Honestly, both of these sounded great for this demo. The 661s were forceful, projected nicely into my room with a heavy, throaty response, while the 821s felt like his voice was billowing out from his chest. It was deeper and had more gravitas, which is what you want from your long-dead evil emperors. Again, both were excellent, but the bigger enclosure means better extension and will have plenty of headroom for much bigger home theaters. Another favorite of mine is A Quiet Place 2. This demo has no bass and is purely atmospheric. No contest, the 821s have the airy detail and spaciousness that totally makes the 661s sound like they haven't grown up yet. And I love the little tweeters on the 61s. It almost sounded like the surround channels were on. That's the kind of depth that I was getting with the 821s, especially with those larger AMT tweeters. They've got a three-dimensional quality to them that almost sounded like an electrostatic speaker. It's nearly as transparent sounding as some of the Martin Logans that I've had in, but falls a tiny bit shy of that holographic soundstage that electrostats tend to give off. Still, Very close though. But compared to the 661s, the 821s take the win. And one more demo. I wanted to see how close the 821s were to the other channels, so I threw on the channel callouts off of the DTS-X demo disc.
Left front, right front, center. Left front, right front, center. Left front, right front, center. Left front, right front, center.
This probably sounds exactly the same over this YouTube video, but trust me, the 821s sounded like they are extending vertically from floor to ceiling. They sound so much bigger than the 661s. The bigger AM Twee has a lot more air and treble response, which I heard from the Quiet Place 2 demo. I found the 661s to be more forward in comparison, slightly more reserved up top, but all the channels did sound exactly the same with having all 661s in every location. Now, unless you are deaf, the 821s, they don't sound like the 661s at any volume level. I know RBH says they share a similar timbre, which I guess maybe you could EQ down the 821s to be smaller sounding. I don't know why you would, but there is a clear difference between the two speakers. The 821 is a better speaker in every way, if you can fit it in your room, of course. Now, I am not a believer in skimping on your surround channels because I know there can be just as much information in those surround channels as the LCRs. It's not every movie that you get this kind of information, but when the occasion arises, you want your surrounds equally as capable as your front channels. If another reviewer tells you otherwise, I can tell you they haven't watched as many movies as I have. Don't cheap out on your surrounds. So would I feel comfortable in using the 821 as my main speakers and using the smaller 661s for the rest of the channels? I'm gonna have to say no. Now, I've watched dozens of movies on the 821s up front, and I can tell it sounds better behind my screen than what's happening in my surrounds. When there are little effects panning throughout the different channels, there is a slight disconnect between the front stage and every place else. So I'm not willing to give up the perfect timbre matching cohesiveness for a better front soundstage experience. It doesn't matter if it's bass managed or not. For me, it's all 661s or all 821s. For anyone else who might not be as picky, I've said it a few times already, the 821 is a better speaker than the 661 in every way. You can run it full range and still get a very good home theater experience for late night viewing, but you will still need a subwoofer to make it reach its full potential. The big 1x4 AMT is one of the most detailed tweeters that I've heard, and most importantly, at least for my use case, you can hang it on your wall for a very inconspicuous setup. This is a killer performing speaker, and if you can imagine, having all matching 821s in every corner of the room, as difficult as that may be to fit, would be just about perfect. Now, if you are interested in grabbing the 821, it is selling for $29.50 at the time of this video. Links will be down in the video's description. So have you heard any of these speakers? And if you did, how did you like the performance? Leave a comment down below and let me know. Well, thanks for watching. Come check me out on Patreon and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll catch you again in the next video.